Hi everybody, it's me Ben, and today I have a very lovely person who's not only a really good builder but also a fantastic human being. And today I wanted to talk a bit about CCBS because it's Hero February, and I figured yes, we can talk about Hero Factory, but we should also talk about the thing that Hero Factory birthed and the thing that's really core to it of the character and creature build system. And I wanted to talk with Patrick about it because he freaking loves it. And he uses it in revolutionary, really good ways. So hi Patrick, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. It's there's a heat wave going through Perth at the moment, which sucks. But the house is cool, so I'm feeling good. Yeah. But how is life in Denmark? I know we just spoke about this before the show, but you know.
It's good. It is not a heat wave. It is cold and wet and gray.
Is it snowing?
It snowed at the end of last week.
Okay. So there's still snow on the ground then, or how quickly does that dry up? I've very rarely seen snow.
This time it disappeared pretty fast. It was there for a day.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
It snowed really aggressively.
Mm.
It was almost like TV or movie snow, just big flakes, just falling so fast and it's so windy. But it didn't stay cold enough for it to last longer than a day.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. Well, that's sick. I've seen all these photos of the Lego house covered in snow, which seems like such a contrast to when I was there. I was actually still pretty cold when I was there, but it wasn't snowing. So yeah, at least it's very pretty, even if it's because that was always something that surprised me about snow. When I have visited America, I'm always oh, it's so pretty and it's so lovely. And then all the Americans are I hate it. There's all these things falling from the sky and it blocks the roads. It makes it incredibly hard to drive. It's just a pain. But it's pretty, even if it is hindering to life.
It is less hindering here than it was when we lived in the US because here we can walk everywhere. So it doesn't really matter as much.
That's fair. Yeah. Yeah, I forget how lovely and walkable it was there. But CCBS. So, what are just some of your general thoughts on CCBS? Whether it's just how you use it or just why you love it. Do you have any just sort of broad thoughts that you would like to share?
I think that it is good.
Hell yeah.
And I like it.
End of podcast. Thanks for watching, guys.
Yeah, broad thoughts are just I think it's a good building system, and I think it's I think the way that it matches the design language of system so well is really nice. And I think it helps broaden the the buildability and helps kind of bridge the gap between the style of, the system building community or just the system builds in general.
Yeah.
And the construction community. I think it helps bring those closer together over the years once CCBS came out and kind of help open up both of those avenues together.
Yeah, it's funny as you say that. I was thinking about I will put a picture up when I am editing this. I don't know what the set number is, but one of the many Hulkbusters sets that Lego released, and it was just in the sweet spot when CCBS was still the molds were still around kind of thing. And it was a Hulkbuster set that I think the upper arms had dark red CCBS shells on it, and it just straight up had a CCBS bone that linked in with system. I think that's one of the most clean examples of it really nicely integrating it with system, because it kind of looks like Iron Man armor and with actual Hero Factory or Ultra Build, or Bionicle sets and stuff. They didn't really put that much system in it, but that there is a really good example of how well it connects with system. Yeah, no, I like what you said there about how it bridges those two things, because I see so many people who are just ew, Bionicle, I want to just build with my bricks and stuff. Yeah, that's sick.
When you get the reverse of that too in some parts of the Bionicle community too, where people are ew, system, that's not Bionicle.
Yeah, hey, yeah, which I don't know, I think that the amount of mocks that I see that so effortlessly combine like curved slopes or just like tiles and other stuff with CCBS pieces. I feel like it was way harder to do that with just olden day Bionicle pieces. Although actually, to be fair, you used to do that a lot because I'll put up a picture of the mock now. There was a time when I was just a wee lad that there was a Patrick Biggs mock that I saw, and it blew my mind because that was like the day that I realized you could like actually combine System and Bionicle. What a revolutionary idea! From your experience, because you've been building Bionicle for a long time, and even still to this day, I personally think that you like are a pioneer with Bionicle pieces, and you find such new and exciting ways to use them even today when the system or the CCBS system isn't around. Like, what's it been like transitioning from purely Bionicle pieces with system pieces to like CCBS with system pieces and stuff?
I mean, it's been interesting. I mean, the reason I used so many system pieces back in the like G1 Bionicle time period is because a lot of the Bionicle parts didn't give me the like shaping and the like the textural elements that I really wanted my mocks to have.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conversation always in the Bionicle community over the years about like what makes something Bionicle.
Yeah, fair.
And like, I know when G2 launched, there was a big segment of the original fan base that was very vocal online about how the CCBS parts weren't textured enough to be Bionicle. They weren't pistony enough. They weren't mechanical enough to be Bionicle. They were too smooth.
Mm-hmm.
But my entire time building in the G1 era, I guess, was me trying to coax the like smooth and sleekness out of the like those parts and trying to like bring them to a point where they didn't have that texture, where the texture didn't work like against the mock so much.
Yes.
And like to me, the textural element of all those Bionicle parts and of those old like builds and stuff, like that was never a core visual principle or aesthetic of the line for me. I mean, so much of us, when we were building back then, we were trying to like we were so motivated to try and build these like really cool action figure-y like versions of characters we liked, or like these really like cool creatures and things, that the actual aesthetic of those parts wasn't really something that was as strongly important to us.
That makes sense.
And so, you know, I spent all that time trying to integrate all these system bits to really hit that like visual flair I was looking for. And nowadays, instead of building out this like 12-piece system slope and tile upper leg armor build, I can just use a Hero Factory, like a CCBS shell, and it gets the exact same visual look down, but I'm using one part instead of 12.
Yeah, and I love that you say that with like using one piece instead of multiple, because I think I'd been saying to you before I was looking for a specific mock that you built on your Flickr, and I got caught up with looking at a lot of your older mocks and just other photos on your Flickr. So I'll have a look at the description to Patrick's stuff. If you'd like a good time, just look through Patrick's Flickr page, because not only are there cool mocks, there's also like lovely photos of like the builders behind them at conventions and stuff. And it's photos like that got me so excited to eventually like go to Brick Fair and all that. But a lot of your older mocks certainly sunk in a lot more pieces, and some of your more modern mocks can be a little more like toned down with the amount of like pieces that are actually put in. And I think that's such a good thing from like a money perspective, because then, you know, you don't have to buy more, you just use what you've got, but you just get like cleaner, nicer results with it as well. So yeah, I think that's one of the lovely benefits of CCBS is you can do more with less. It's such a good system. I had a question with something that came up as you were saying it, because certainly something I know that you do a lot now is you like to build a lot of kind of like Toa characters, or like you certainly build things outside of the Bionicle universe, but like I know you often do go back to like, you know, like Takanuva or Rakshi or that's sort of those sorts of types of characters. How much of your love of just like classic Bionicle, how much do you feel like you can achieve that with CCBS pieces? Because I know you were saying too before, like the amount of times people want to maybe rebel against CCBS because it's not Bionicle enough. Do you still feel like you can kind of achieve that like nostalgic essence of Bionicle with these more modern pieces? If that makes sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, I think so. I mean, obviously I build a lot of Toa for like collabs and things like that too. And I feel like I actually very rarely integrate a lot of like old G1 parts. It's all, you know, CCBS or Technic or Technic adjacent system parts. And it all, like, for me, I don't think the visual aesthetic of like really busy part design was ever an actual like intrinsic part of Bionicle's identity.
Mm-hmm.
Like being around, I guess, for the entirety of G1, being online, just way too online. Like I joined BZ Power in January of 2002
Yeah.
and have never looked back.
Yeah.
But like seeing every wave had like a different aesthetic, and every every piece had a different like style and a different story. And for me, the thing that always drew me in was always just those first few Toa sets and the McDonald's McTorin and the simplicity of that visual language from the original line of sets. Those original 6 to 12 Kanoe masks with just that simple, iconic, striking visual language. That's always been the thing that to me is Bionicle.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to use CCBS and system pieces and recreate some of those characters, paying more attention to maybe what the actual character focus of them is,
Yeah.
and less about what the visual language used to be.
Yeah.
I think that's been successful for me. There's always people who comment on mocks like that and they're like, "Oh, this doesn't look like Kongu to me, though."
Yeah.
And that's fair enough.
Yeah.
But they didn't wear bomber jackets in G1, so I get it.
Yeah.
But the Kongu Anika that I did for that collab a few years ago,
Yes.
where he's wearing the bomber jacket and the tennis shoes.
Yes.
Focusing on that mock, my whole goal was, what is Kongu's character? Like, what is this story arc? What is he doing? And how can I represent that in this mock?
Yeah.
Like I said, for me, the original masks are always going to be the most iconic, and I've always really hated the Anika rubber masks. So, I went with the original Miru, the bomber jacket, because I was like, oh, it's kind of like an Air Force jacket, and Kongu was basically like the leader of Lee Koro's Air Force. He was the captain of like their little like military group, so that felt accurate.
Yeah.
And then he was also, he's from the cool tribe, the ones that have their own cool slang and they're different than everyone.
Yeah.
I don't know, just something about giving him like visual flair that maybe some of the other characters wouldn't have felt right. The whole story of the Voya Nui arc originally is like the island's been taken over. Like the Toa are like an insurgent rebellious group. Like they're, the whole marketing was like this urban environment, this like big city and like cool like dark themes and like hip hop and just like really silly and like kind of a goofy, the Danes trying to figure out what's cool to kids.
Yes. Yeah. Yo-Yo Paraka.
But at the same time, like my thought was like, okay, cool. So like they're a cool like counterinsurgency team. Like they're rebels who are like trying to live in the shadows and like take over the like evil governments and like that they're like working in this like cityscape. And so having like that cool like more like modern like comic booky aesthetic for his costume felt right to me.
Absolutely.
And then at that point in time, I was like, all right, well, Kongu's original colors were teal, his set colors were dark green. So what if we did a compromise and, Matoran Kongu was teal, and then when he became a Toa, he became dark green. So the parts of him that you can see underneath the jacket represents his Toa-ness, so the jacket's dark green, but underneath that you can see that he, Kongu, he's teal. And then I approached the areas where all the silver on the mock is, or is the same places that silver was on the set. And I was like, all right, so for me, being able to build the character is something that's a lot easier than it was before. Like these parts enable more focus on what is the character saying, what is it doing, what is its personality, than what I feel like I could do with the old G1 parts, or focusing on like what visual design says Bionicle, because I honestly, I think that I don't agree with like a chunk of the community on what they think Bionicle looks like.
Yeah. You said before like how iconic the look of the original like 6 masks was, and how you feel like a lot of that is what it is that makes Bionicle for you. And honestly, you've kind of blown my mind with that, because I think in a very similar way to that, and I've just never put it into words. because that's also something that I like will read a lot, especially on like YouTube videos and stuff, where people will comment and be like, yeah, this just doesn't like feel like Bionicle, or it's not quite the same, like they no longer look like the actual like character does or whatever. But I don't know, I feel like I often look at Bionicle less about how the character looked and more, like you said, the underlying person and the character traits of that, or the energy of the mask as well. Yeah, I don't know, I love the way of looking at Bionicle like that. Maybe it's just because that's how I think of it, so I can relate to it. Obviously, people will think differently, but like, yeah, I think that's such a great way to approach mocks as well, is not to just copy the same visual style, but take the like essence and the energy of the character. And you certainly do that with your builds, whether it's your older stuff or your newer stuff. That's so sick. What do you think it is about CCBS that makes it easier to convey that same like energy or aesthetic that was a little bit more like difficult with older pieces?
I think it's just because it's less busy.
Yeah.
Not having to worry as much about how do I cover this detail, or how can this pinhole stay open? Like,
Yeah.
do I need to like stud plug all of the holes?
Yeah.
Being able to just say, and it opens up such a better, like a larger world of other parts to use, because of the way it meshes so seamlessly with so much of systems visual language. Like, you have a lot more freedom to focus on character defining like details than you did with G1 parts, or with that era of building, to me.
No, I totally agree with that. Yeah.
And so I think the ability to just say, I can use one part instead of 12. I can use my mental energy on how does this bring out the character versus how do I build this section.
Definitely.
Like, my mocks range in a variety of like difficulty and like building technique wise. Like, there's, like the big animals are dramatically more complex and parts intensive than like a Toa mock is. But even then, like, just the ability to say, okay, well, here, this part is the easy, like, it, it's the old, like, you're in school and your teacher's like, hey man, just like keep it simple, don't overthink it. And that's, I think, been one of my like defining mock ethoses my whole life, has just been keep it simple. Like, if this one piece works for this, why not use it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it may not be the most like unique or creative or like groundbreaking idea, but like, if it works, trying to build up some like really intense mechanism that does the exact same thing but happens to look messier, I don't think it's worth the time.
Yeah.
And so I think the pieces themselves allow for more flexibility, because you can focus more on who am I building, not how am I building it.
Yeah. God, you're blowing my mind with how you think about CCBS. Like, I love it. I know, that's why I love doing YouTube videos, because like it's just a way for me to like take my thoughts and like verbalize it, and then be like, oh, that's why I love Lego so much, and like just makes it feel more tangible and stuff. And it's like hearing other people's opinions on stuff like this and having them put it into words, it makes me happy. Something you said before, it reminded me of something that Magmafrost13 said at Brickvention. A lot of us were like looking at his mocks at his table, and he said one of the biggest moments that kind of like clicked for him with Lego building was they used to always use pieces to like, they tried to force pieces to kind of become something that they're not. But the day that they realized, like, let me just look at the piece that I'm using and like, what is the shape of it? What does it look like? I'm going to now use it for that, instead of trying to shoehorn like 3 or 4 different pieces to become an arm design. Instead I'm going to use this like candlestick because it looks like an arm. And to them, that made Lego building like so much easier, like not having to like force something or like push the boulder up the hill, instead just like let it happen. Yeah, and I feel like what you said with CCBS, that is such a benefit for it as well. So that's really cool. Yeah. One other question I have for you about CCBS. Well, I don't know, before you were just talking about a lot of different ways to use it and stuff. Do you have any like other additional advice for people who maybe are a bit newer to building, or they have built before or whatever, but like maybe not as much with CCBS? Like, do you have any other advice for just building with CCBS?
I mean, I think you just kind of have to play with it. Like, yeah. Sometimes it feels really restrictive because it only has the ball socket or the pins, but at the same time, having the ball sockets and the pins offers up so many more connection points and angles than if they were just like studs,
Yeah.
Like, or if they were just like a Technic beam. the ball joint allows you to do so many different angles or shapes or different like connection points, and the little pinholes allow you to do so much with with building on or building under. I think it's just something you have to play with. Like you have to be comfortable just being like, I'm gonna build some mocks for this, and they may not be very good, or they may not be as good as I want them to, but you kind of just have to get a feel for how the parts go together.
Yeah.
Like I think there was a period like not too long after CCBS like came out, and like especially when G2 was out and about, and like CCBS was suddenly there was more of it. Like there was just more because the Hero Factory sets were great for it, but the G2 Bionicle sets just came with so much more.
Yeah.
Where I feel like I was almost exclusively building mocks that were almost entirely just CCBS based. And I don't think that was my best period of building, like from just a sheer, like, what does this mock end result look like?
Okay.
But I don't think that I'd be able to be building the things that I am now had I not spent, like a year or two just being like, okay, what are these parts? What am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, I need to sit down and just like try to focus on these parts specifically.
Absolutely.
And so I think you just have to be comfortable just being like, I've got a bunch of these pieces and I don't entirely know how to fit them in with what I'm doing. So let's just play. I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I'm like, right? Like that's the whole point of Lego is let's just play.
For sure. I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah. Because I remember when CCBS first dropped, I felt very like similarly to that, where I remember specifically the two lightsaber bar connections inside like your typical CCBS armor piece. I remember that like feeling so alien to me because the only thing I could come up with was to actually just put like lightsaber bars in it, and I'm like, that looks stupid. Like, why would I do that? And I remember that feeling so intimidating, or there was a part of me that was like, why isn't this a stud connection, or why isn't this just like not there? But now, having spent way more time with CCBS and playing with it and using it and seeing how other people build with it, that like is the best part of CCBS pieces almost. Yeah, I like that. Just playing with it and messing around certainly feels like the right approach. I mentioned before too, when like CCBS dropped, like some of my earlier opinions on it. When it dropped for you, when it first came out in like Hero Factory 2.0, I think that was 2011. What were your thoughts on it then, and then like how has that changed now?
Well, that one's interesting.
Yeah.
When it dropped, that was back when I was doing BZ Power set reviews for the front page.
Cool.
So I actually received Firelord, Next, and Furno as preview sets to do reviews for like 3 months before they were released.
Oh, awesome.
So like I had them in hand before a lot of other people did. Like we'd only seen pictures, but I had them in hand.
Yeah.
So like while people are discussing the parts, like I'm using them. But like when I first like got them in hand, and I remember first seeing the first image of like Furno 2.0 and being like, oh, huh. And just being a little apprehensive. I definitely remember a good chunk of us thinking that it looked bad.
Fair.
And just being like, is this and it was such a different building experience than what we were so used to with Bionicle. I mean, At the end of the day, the spirit of it was the same as what we were getting with Bionicle. Put the upper arm onto the ball joint, put the lower arm onto the upper arm, put the fist on. Now cover the arm joint where that's the upper arm or the lower arm with a pin and then a piece of armor.
Yeah.
It was the same spirit, except that they swapped all the pins and axles for the ball sockets, and it was so different to think about.
Yeah.
And the way it looked on those first, and I think those 2.0 sets, I still don't think they're very good.
They're certainly different to the other ones. That's fair.
Yeah, and I think the designers were also learning the system as the system was coming out.
Absolutely.
And it makes me really wonder what like CCBS sets would look like if they were still coming out right now.
Yeah.
Like what if G2 had been able to keep going and do more with those pieces than what like the Star Wars Ultra builds were doing.
Yeah.
I'm like, what would those sets look like now as the designers became, like 10 years into it?
Yeah.
But I do remember thinking like, I don't know what these parts are, and I don't know entirely how we're going to use them. I remember thinking that the skeleton pieces, that the limbs and the torsos would probably be the most handy parts of all of it.
Oh, yeah.
Because we were like, oh, something like, like instead of like the double jointed, like the double piece socket that we all used for everything for upper arms and lower legs and upper legs and middles of torsos.
Yeah.
Suddenly we had all these pieces with different angled ball joints on them and like all these different things that could open up.
Yeah,
and it's funny because I feel like the exact opposite has kind of been what happened with my mocks, is that all of the armor and shells and cladding pieces, those are like my bread and butter, and the actual pieces that were designed to connect with them are ones that I just have a big bin of and kind of casually go through sometimes.
Yeah, hey, that's great.
But yeah, when it first came out, there was definitely a like, I'm not sure what to do with this. I feel, because I built several mocks that were more like, like G1 era, my version of like system and old Bionicle integrated mocks were just like, they were just like Hero Factory pieces like tacked on.
Yes.
And it was like, I don't really entirely know what I'm doing with this. And so like when it first came out, it was definitely kind of a like, oh, I don't really know what's happening here. But there's also, I don't know, I don't feel like anybody in the group of people that I was building with at that point in time, I don't think any of us were like, ugh, this sucks and we're never going to use it. We hate this.
Yeah.
There was always just a like, well, this is new. I don't know if I like it or not, but new pieces are new pieces. So let's see what we can do.
For sure. That's cool. You mentioned before too, like if they were still going with CCBS, with, if G2 kept going, or I don't know, they brought out something else or whatever. I have no idea if CCBS will ever return. The biggest hurdle for me seems to be that I'm sure those molds no longer exist. In fact, I'm almost guaranteed they don't exist because they just don't keep molds. It's way too expensive to do that. But if it ever did return, or a variant of it returned, how would you want it to return? Whether that's Bionicle or not, are there certain types of CCBS pieces you'd be excited for, or is there some sort of theme that you would like it to be? Like, what are your thoughts on that? I know this is kind of a loaded topic because any discussion about like what's the future of Bionicle is always just pure speculation and never really grounded in anything. But like, I'm curious to at least hear your thoughts.
I mean, I am a sucker for Bionicle, so I would love a CCBS G3.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm a sucker. Like, I think it's one of the things, like I said earlier, where I was like, oh, like Bionicle for me has always been that, like, it's been more about like the character design than it is about the parts design.
Yep.
I think that's partly because, and I know there's gonna be people who look at it like mocks that like me and like some of our friends build. They're like, oh, well, you're not really building Bionicle mocks anymore. But I actually think it's because I'm too much of a Bionicle fan.
Oh yeah.
To the point where I'm like, I want to do this character well. And I don't care if that means it doesn't look like the set.
That's fair. I get that.
And I'm like, oh no, I would love a Bionicle G3. I loved G2. I thought it had a lot of potential, and it was, cut down not in its prime, but before it had a chance to show us what that prime could look like.
Absolutely.
And I think that the fan community thoughts on it are still a little unfair, oftentimes.
I don't disagree. Yeah.
I think that there was an expectation for G2 to have the like intense, over detailed trivia knowledge like G1 had right out the gate. But like when G1 launched, it was 6 weird robot guys with masks on an island, and there you go. That's all we had.
Yeah, actually, good point. Yeah. I mean, the lore is like, so integral G2, to it, but like, yeah, no, I agree with what you said. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, I said G2 just never got a chance to really get that lore built up from the beginning point.
Yeah.
But I think it had a great beginning point, and I think it had a lot of chance and energy.
For sure.
Like I said, I feel like it was treated a little unfairly. But anyway, to the question, I would love a G3. Like I said, I'm a Bionicle homer until I die. So I would love that. And I think parts wise, what I would want to see is more add-on variety pieces, like the new pieces that came with like G2, like the little add-on piece that kind of looks like the original Toa's torso.
Yes. Like the one that's on like Stormer XL in like silver.
No, the one that came out with Bionicle G2, like the
yeah.
Like the one that I mean, I think it's clearly designed to mimic the look of the original Toa torso with like the piston and the bendy portion in the center and the pistons on the edge.
Yes.
And then that like circle on the top.
Yes.
more things like that, more new parts that like peg into the system, more fun variations of that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the thing that CCBS promised and didn't get to deliver on as much. And I think that a lot of comments about like the textures of CCBS not being bionically enough would be solved with a more wide variety of add-on pieces.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
More things to do, more things to see there.
Yeah.
I think maybe some more shell types or shapes would be fine, but I'm pretty happy with the shells that exist. I think it's the add-on pieces that I would love to see more of. Less big new molds made for just this range of sets and more use of here's the system as it is, let's add on to it.
Yes. Yeah. No, I can get behind that because I think those are also the pieces that excited me the most whenever new CCBS sets came out.
Yeah.
Like for example, because it was one of the last like kind of CCBS sets we got, like the Praetorian Guard from the Star Wars Ultra Build sets, like the cool sort of segmented red armor that I believe went on the shoulders of the Praetorian Guard. I love that piece, and that's kind of like a nice add-on to CCBS.
Yeah, like the Darth Maul like cloth texture piece.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Like more things like that I would love to see.
Definitely.
Or, just that one Chima Ultra Build shoulder tab piece that was also used on the Akimu Toa set.
Oh gosh, yeah. That's such a good part.
Just in something that's not gold.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. Ninjago sets love to have gold too. I don't know if new Bionicle, if that ever came out, would fall into that same color scheme. But
that's fine. I like gold. I want those pieces that come in gold to also come in colors that aren't gold.
Yeah, fair. Good point. Yeah, absolutely. No, I can agree with you there. That I would also probably want that sort of same thing with like new CCBS pieces if that ever happens. If
I have probably. I mean, my assumption is probably not, but it would be cool.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. It's provided it doesn't bankrupt them to make an entirely new system of pieces, but Lego's smart. They're not. They're a company that knows how to spend their money. I'm sure they'll figure something out. With what we're kind of talking about with like add-on pieces and different stuff, we do have. I'm not sure how. I don't really hear the term that much, but it is a term that Lego employees have used when they were marketing the sets and other stuff. SCCBS, the System, Character, and Creature Building System. That's coming out in various different Ninjago sets, which is that same sort of spirit of CCBS where you'll have that main kind of frame for a lot of mechs or dragons and things, and then there's a lot of additional armor that you can add on or swap out or change. Like especially even the most like recent wave of Ninjago sets, they even kind of really promote how much they want you to swap out, the torso on this one with the torso on the other one and change up the legs or whatever. What are your thoughts on SCCBS? Because, it's just one letter difference, and it's roughly the same kind of concept. I don't know how many, where you stand with that.
I mean, I think it's a good idea. Mm-hmm. I think it's a good concept, and it's a nice, like, spiritual idea for people who liked CCBS and for, like, that kind of building.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's really a system at this point.
Yeah.
Like, I think the idea behind it is definitely there, and like the things we've seen some of the designers talk about in relation to it. But it doesn't feel like a fully realized idea. To me, it feels more like a term that one of the designers used to be like, oh, like here's like my concept for this, and like I'm hoping to like integrate more ideas of that into future sets. And a bunch of fans were like, oh, yep, we have a brand new CCBS. It's SCCBS, and it's everywhere now.
Yeah.
And it feels like a concept still that exists in theory more than does in practice.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. Even to the logic of what you were saying before too, where you were like, I wish that G2 could keep going because I feel like they would have found their footing more and they would have expanded upon it more and it would have grown into something really beautiful. It was already beautiful, but it would have grown even more beautiful. I feel like that's kind of the same with SCCBS. I think we've had it for like 2, maybe 3 years. I've kind of lost track. But I feel like they are slowly finding their footing with it and expanding upon it. And so maybe it will become its own like beast. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't know how much it is this like distinct thing that Lego is like, we've got this new concept. It's just a name. But
yeah, I think it's too soon.
Definitely. I think that's fair. I think that honestly is the same thing to say about CCBS returning in general. It's too soon. Maybe 20 years from now, everyone will want buildable action figures. I hope, but who knows?
I mean, this year, towards the end of the year, this will be the 10th anniversary of the announcement for G2. So I mean,
Wow. Actually, let's quickly talk about that because you were there at Comic-Con when they announced that. You got like flown. Did you get flown down or you just got invited?
we had to pay for it.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Still worth it because every time I go onto your Flickr and see photos of that, I get incredibly jealous because that looks like the most incredible thing ever.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was really, really fun.
Because they had like little bins with CCBS just there for you to play with and all sorts of cool stuff, didn't they?
Yeah. So there were two different events. So there was the like launch event at New York City Comic Con, which was a panel with the lead concept artist and designer, and they talked through what they looked at, what they were going for. They showed us the designs for the animated shorts.
Cool.
They talked about how they went back to the original Bionicle G1 time and looked at what really made Bionicle. Like, what was the spirit? What was the thing? What was the ideas behind it? They zeroed in a lot on like the Matt New game.
Oh yeah.
Which is why the original shorts we got were the Protectors telling the story, and then you see the story happening with his voice over it.
Cool.
Like, those animations were specifically designed to kind of evoke that same Templar energy from the old anime, the old Matt game stuff.
Yeah.
I think that was Templar. I don't remember if they did that or if they were the ones who did the full CG videos, but
right.
The Matt game stuff specifically was what they were looking at the energy of for those things.
Mm-hmm.
And they looked a lot at what did the original design language say, and then they talk a lot about how 2001, 2002, 2003 were, as far as sales go, those were Bionicle's strongest peak, and those 3 years each sold more than 04 through 10 combined did.
Wow, jeez.
And so when they talked about bringing Bionicle back, they were like, what about those 3 years besides just the novelty of this new thing?
Yeah.
What is it that made those so unique and made them stand out and made those so enduring?
Yeah.
And it was a great talk. I mean, they showed us a whole bunch of cool concept art. That was really fun. I really liked doing that.
So
and
cool.
Then there was a second event that we got the second clear Tahu Mask of Fire at, because there's two different versions. There's the one from New York City Comic Con in the bubble, and then there's the one from the new at the time Flatiron building Lego store opening.
Yes.
That are labeled 1 through 100.
Oh.
And so that was a event that was it was a grand opening celebration of the new Lego store that was also then tied into the G2 launch.
Yeah, right.
So we did that, and the designers gave a talk again. There were kind of the way they do build a minifigure stands, or when they do at a new event at a Lego store. There's build this car bins and stuff, and there's just the parts that they're G2 build experience. Here's a bunch of parts from it.
Sick.
And so we're all building and having fun, and then the designers gave up and gave a talk. And then when they were done, they were also, by the way, we have a surprise for you all. You get to keep whatever you build.
Oh.
And so I used 8 of the Onua Master torsos, and I built a basket, and I filled the basket with parts.
Nice. Big brain thinking, heck yeah.
Yeah, I was we get to keep it, and from what I've learned later on is that any type of parts that are used for public building experiences, because of the the contamination and the germs and just the use and wear on those.
Right.
Those parts are generally just disposed of afterward.
I guess that makes sense.
I feel dramatically less bad. Yeah. I feel dramatically less bad about building a basket and taking a bunch of
right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'd never thought of it like that. Makes sense.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was great. That's one of my best memories is just going to New York City Comic Con and then meeting a bunch of the Bionicle designers and getting to be on the preview NDA team for that.
Yeah.
I've got a cool framed Bionicle G2 concept art poster signed by all the designers that we got from that. And
so beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really lovely.
Yeah.
if I could build mocks that have that kind of atmosphere just inherent in them, I would feel so good about my whole life.
See, I feel like you do with some of your Toa builds. I don't know. I think you have achieved that personally, but I get what you mean. Some of that art is gorgeous, and having seen that poster in your house in Denmark before, it's it's stunning.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm looking at it right now. Looks great. Good job, Matt Bedecker.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of everything I had about like questions and discussion about CCBS. But if there's anything else you want to talk about, now's the time.
I just like it. Like I already feel like I've just rambled on about like design philosophy and Bionicle, like visual versus like mental aesthetics a lot. To maybe even not have talked about CCBS itself a lot.
No,
but
I liked our discussion.
I think it's a good system. I think it's, for me personally, it ticks all of the things that I really wanted to exist when I was in that G1 era. It opens up so much more possibility. And I know when I think it's Bricks Cascade, maybe 2013, 2014.
Mm-hmm.
The community manager at that time, who was at that convention, we were talking about Bionicle and about CCBS, and he mentioned that one of the whole goals of CCBS was to be more in line with the system aesthetic.
Yeah.
Like one of the whole goals of Bionicle itself as a concept was to be kind of a bridge system.
Oh, okay.
Like the goal is to bring in kids who maybe would have at the age that Bionicle was targeted at, maybe it would have aged out of Lego sets.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And the idea is to keep them invested and then feed them back into Lego sets. But what really didn't happen for a good chunk of the Bionicle community is they never really then reintegrated into system sets.
Yeah.
And so what you ended up with instead was a whole bunch of they were fans of Lego Bionicle, but they weren't Lego fans of Bionicle.
Yeah. Huh.
So you end up with this whole section of Bionicle fandom, even today online, where like they're fans of Bionicle, not of Lego.
Yeah.
And like the Lego aspect of Bionicle is its least important aspect to them. Whereas for like me and like, the people that I generally associate with and hang out with and consider friends, for us, the Lego aspect of Bionicle is the most important aspect of Bionicle.
Yeah, definitely. I feel that. Yeah. It makes sense because like, as someone who is a very big Bionicle fan, but also a very big system fan, and sometimes I feel like I'm actually even a bigger system fan than I am a Bionicle fan, but depends on the day.
Well, that's because systems still exist.
Yeah, fair. But like, I feel like Bionicle, I don't know, I still really like system all the whole time Bionicle was there, but like, I could see that potentially kept my interest in system and made me not want to drift away from it at any point. So even though it seemed to not work with the bulk of their audience, I guess it maybe to a degree worked on me. But that's fascinating. That's so cool. I love hearing all these like behind the scenes things with Bionicle. It's so cool.
Yeah, I just love Bionicle.
Yeah, man, same.
Just despite myself.
You have a Bionicle tattoo, don't you?
I do have a Bionicle tattoo. Yes,
Heck.
It's actually worse than being a Bionicle tattoo because it's a co-Bionicle / BZ Power tattoo.
Nice, even better. I should probably say this because there's probably people watching this who've never even heard of BZ Power. It is a old Bionicle forum website, which was kind of like the Bionicle place to be back in the day.
It hurt my soul.
Yeah.
I say during G1, I mean that was like the center of the online community. Like,
yes,
we had like 60,000 members. Like it was like, I mean, there were obviously always going to be other communities that existed that didn't even orbit it, that had no idea that it existed.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool, considering how many of those communities have all like collided now in this era of like Lego of online world.
Absolutely.
Internet 3.0 or whatever internet we're on right now. Like I think that's really cool, and like having met a bunch of people who were fans for all of G1 and posted mocks online, but had never interacted with BZ Power. That's fascinating to me because like, to me, the entire like Bionicle community is always going to be centered on that on BZ Power from that era. Like
Yeah.
that's where it all was. That's where everything came from. You know, Lego hosted canon contests only on BZ Power.
Yeah.
Like there's at the end of the first Hero Factory movie, which is not a great film. But there's that like big robot they have to fight either at the beginning of it or in the flashback when, you know, Black Phantom becomes bad or whatever.
Yes.
That robot's a mock that won a contest hosted by Lego on BZ Power.
Oh gosh, it is, isn't it? My alarm was going off. Yes. No, I'd forgotten about that, but I remember that was the case. I remember watching the movie thinking that. Yeah. Wow. Huh.
Yeah, it was just a different time, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes I miss message board culture, but not gonna lie, I am much more enjoying the hang out with your friends on Discord era of the community a lot more than I did the big moderators are cool and set the tone for everything life, even though I was one of those moderators.
Yeah. No, I get that. I think that was the biggest reason, because you were saying how like everything revolved around BZ Power. For me, everything revolved around mock pages, because that's where I was most active in. Oh, I think I joined mock pages in like 2010, like when Hero Factory started, kind of thing. But for me, that was my like Bionicle hub back in the day. And like I knew about BZ Power, but I was always never a big fan of forums. So I was always just sort of like turned away from it. But then I remember looking at people like you and other people on BZ Power, like Yanni and all sorts of different people, and being like, oh, they're the cool kids. Like, you know, they build all sorts of insane stuff, and like what it would be like to go to a Lego convention in America and hang out with them. Like, oh, so yeah, even though I never really collided with BZ Power, I was always aware of it. Yeah, such a fun relic of the past.
Probably where it should stay, even though I will love it forever.
That's fair. Well, yeah, I think that's basically everything then with this little discussion about CCBS. It was lovely talking to you, Patrick. It's always lovely talking to you, though. But if people want to, thank you. If people want to find you on the internet and look at your cool mocks or scroll your Flickr and find your fun photos of the past of Bionicle, where should they go?
Well, they can find me on Instagram at dviddy, which is DVIDDY.
Nice.
And then, which is the name of which I could do a whole podcast of just all of my goofy internet names. And then I think my username these days on Flickr is also dviddy, but I think the actual link is like flickr.com/ahava516, which is a different lifetime ago as well.
But also, I think if you just
Google, different era.
If you just Google Patrick Biggs, you'll find you. Yeah.
Patrick Biggs Lego will get you there.
Absolutely. We need to do I remember we debated doing it at one point and then it just fell off, but there's still time. We were talking about doing like an old Bionicle community like history podcast, like talking about all of that, like really diving into like BZ Power in the past and like going through year by year and like highlighting like landmark mocks from each year or something. And maybe we have to do that, because that sounded like fun, but we just never did.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot of fun, especially if you grabbed people like Cam or Yanni or some of those people who have been there, Todd. People who've been there in the fun like half period of time. You're gonna have to put all these like links to people who I just say their first name of and nobody has any idea who they are.
Yeah, it'll probably be a lot of work to edit and put together, but it'll be worth it. Yeah, that'd be cool. Well, yeah, thank you so much, man. That's the end of the podcast.
Good end.
Heck yeah.